Trains have been a preferred method of travel for centuries and are part of everyday life for millions of people everywhere. But there are some railways, train routes, and bridges around the world that offer some pretty frightening and downright dangerous rides. Join us as we take a look at 15 of the most dangerous railway bridges. Number 15. Minami Aso, Japan. While this train itself may not be dangerous, the path that it travels is certainly a perilous one. Along the way, the Minami Aso Railway in Japan passes through the base of an active volcano before reaching the Tateno Bridge. Although this wooden and steel bridge is a sturdy one, it still shakes as it passes high above a body of water. It may be a beautiful view, but it's best not to look down if you're afraid of heights. And while the ride may be safe, the threat of earthquakes in Japan is still very real and can easily spell disaster for anyone on board going through the volcano, and especially traveling over the Tateno Bridge at the wrong time. In fact, in 2016, parts of the track were damaged after a major earthquake that rocked the country. Number 14. Chennai Rameswaram Route, India. Rameswaram is one of the holiest places in India and naturally a huge tourist destination. Getting there by train is one of the most popular travel methods, but once they've reached their destination, it's not uncommon for foreigners to leave the train pale in the face. That's because the train passes over the harrowing Kaiman Bridge. The Kaiman Bridge was built in 1914 right into the seabed of the Indian Ocean and is almost 2.5 kilometers long. The only problem is the bridge is often flooded by seawater and can fall victim to some pretty seriously high winds. Because of the potentially dangerous journey, the train can only travel a meager 15 miles an hour when going over the Kaiman Bridge. So if you're on board during a storm, you'll be in it for quite a while, assuming the weather doesn't cause the train to derail. And oddly enough, the locals will say that despite the rough waters, the best way to reach Rameswaram is still by boat. Number 13. Georgetown Loop Railroad, Colorado. Built at the turn of the 20th century and traveling all through the gorgeous Rocky Mountains is the Georgetown Loop Railroad. Historically, the area was known for its high concentration of silver mines, and this railway was the only means of reaching them to claim your fortune. The railway closed back in 1938, but has since been redone and reopened for tourists. Although there are some breathtaking views, the train passes over the Devil's Gate High Bridge. And with a name like that, you better believe that Devil's Gate High Bridge is an incredibly narrow suspension bridge that will make you feel like one small tilt in the wrong direction will send you over the edge. To make things even more frightening and heightening the sense of danger, it's suspended 640 feet off the ground, and back during the bridge's heyday, there was access for extra brave adventurers to walk across it. Although there have never been any incidents since its creation, it's still a pretty harrowing drop. Number 12. Kaiman's Bridge, South Africa. The first curved bridge ever built in South Africa, the Kaiman's Bridge offers train travelers some gorgeous views over the Kaiman River and has become a popular tourist attraction over the years. The bridge itself is 210 meters long and 36 meters high, and hitting those curves at such a high speed and with such a long drop can be pretty terrifying, especially with the bridge being 100 years old. Couple that with the fact that it passes over a major river, it's susceptible to floods during certain times of year. You definitely don't want to be on board when that happens. In fact, back in 2006, the railway was pretty badly damaged after heavy flooding and was in need of some serious repairs. And while it's okay now, another event like that is still very much a reality. Number 11. Death Railway, Thailand. With a name like Death Railway, what could possibly go wrong? The popular railway connects Thailand to Myanmar and was built primarily by POWs during the Second World War. So many workers died during its construction that it earned the name Death Railway. The railway eventually leads to a bridge that was actually the inspiration for the famous film The Bridge on the River Kwai. But what makes the bridge so dangerous is that it traverses through an incredibly lush yet dense forest, and also winds its way high through the mountains and comes dangerously close to plenty of rock faces. Keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times. Over the years, both the railway and the bridge have fallen into various states of disarray, but service still continues for anyone willing to risk it. Number 10. Salta-Polvorillo, Argentina. This famous train route in Argentina took 27 years to build and has a total of 13 bridges along the railway. But there's one bridge in particular that has become incredibly popular with tourists. The train has become known as the Tren a las Nubes, or Train to the Clouds in English. That's because it rides the rails at an amazing 4,200 meters above sea level. Hope you're not afraid of heights. The narrow track runs about 225 meters long, so once you start on it, there's no turning back. Connecting Argentina with the Chilean border in the Andes mountain range, this is the 5th highest railway in the world. Originally built for trade and economic routes, it's now used as a heritage railway that gives passengers a little bit of the nation's history with a bird's-eye view. If you're afraid of heights, then this probably isn't for you, since when you look out of the windows, it'll feel more like you're in an airplane rather than on a train. Number 9. Cikubang Bridge, Indonesia. The Cikubang Bridge in West Java is a railway bridge connecting the cities of Bandung and Jakarta. It's the longest bridge in Indonesia at about 300 meters long, and it's held up by 4 steel pillars, each one weighing 110 pounds. Built in 1906, the 100-plus-year-old bridge stands 80 meters above the bottom of the Cikubang River, where it's built into the riverbed. The entire trip takes about 3 hours, but of course, the real fun begins when you reach the bridge. When you look down below, you'll see not just a beautiful subtropical valley below, but an insanely long drop that'll make your stomach into knots. Despite the danger of falling, however, the Cikubang Bridge is still one of the most popular Indonesian tourist attractions for those willing to take the risk.
We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button.
Number 8. Devil's Nose, Ecuador. The Nariz del Diablo, or Devil's Nose, is a railway that lives up to its name. The Ecuadorian government built this zigzag of a railway along 500 meters of some pretty insane hills and rock faces, known as the Condor's Eyrie. It's easily one of the scariest train rides in the world. The Devil's Nose was constructed almost 3,000 meters above sea level, and there are 0 side guardrails to protect the train and the passengers, many of whom ride on top of the cars. The route also has lots of switchbacks, meaning the train will go up the mountainside only to come back down and then go back up again. Although it's complicated, it was the only way for engineers to get the train through the insane route in one piece. And you know that a train this dangerous to ride is going to be equally, if not more dangerous, to build. It took about 4,000 workers to construct, and unfortunately half of them died building it. But despite the morbid history and risk of bodily harm, the Devil's Nose is still one of Ecuador's most popular and dangerous tourist attractions. Number 7. White Pass and Yukon Route, Alaska, USA. Once used as a railway for miners during the lucrative Klondike Gold Rush, the White Pass and Yukon route in Alaska will take you along a beautiful but terrifying route. To get to the gold in the Yukon, miners took the train on a 915-meter climb up the mountains in about 3 hours. And while being more than 900 meters high in the snow-capped mountains may be visually appealing for some, many travelers had to put their fear of heights aside in hopes of striking it rich in the early 1900s. And if you think building this treacherous railway was easy, then think again. It took plenty of manpower and ingenuity to build this modern marvel. Workers would hang from ropes alongside the mountains, drilling small holes into the rock face. Then the next crew would climb up and place dynamite inside to blast the mountains apart. And since they were still building the train, this meant that workers had to make the climb by horse. Many of the horses died on the way up, leaving their riders to traverse this snowy and perilous mountain range on foot. But the train route is still in use today, ensuring that none of their work was done in vain. Number 6. Pilatus Railway, Switzerland. Commissioned in 1889, the Pilatus Railway in Switzerland lets you ride the rails 2,100 meters above sea level. And with a gradient of 48% throughout, it's the steepest cogwheel railway in the world. The trip is a short one though, clocking in at around half an hour, and takes you from Outeniqua to the Pilatus Kluun. But with such an incline and its maximum altitude of over 2,000 meters, you'll be feeling like you're riding a roller coaster taking its way to the top of the track. It travels tightly through the alpine cliffs and meadows on very narrow track, which gives some riders a pretty claustrophobic feeling while on board. It's another railway where a tip in the wrong direction could spell disaster, but luckily there have never been any accidents in its 130-year history. So if you can stomach it, the Pilatus Railway does offer some pretty spectacular, one-of-a-kind views of Switzerland in the summer. Number 5. Kuranda Scenic Railway, Australia. The Kuranda Scenic Railway in Australia is not for the faint of heart. Known as one of the most dangerous train routes in the world, it does, however, boast some pretty spectacular views of the area. Passing through the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Barron Gorge National Park, it takes you all throughout the area's rainforests. Built in the 19th century, the Kuranda Scenic Railway takes passengers along the coast of Cairns on a 37-kilometer stretch for about 2 hours. But why is it so dangerous? Well, it follows a cliffside with a serious drop that gets so close to the area's waterfalls that if the conditions are right, they can completely engulf the train in the water, crashing from above. Not to mention the 15 claustrophobic handmade tunnels in the mountains and the 37 narrow bridges the train has to travel across at about 328 meters above sea level. One look down and you may wish you never got on. Number 4. Outeniqua Choo-Tjoe Train, South Africa. Built over 100 years ago, the Outeniqua Choo-Tjoe train in South Africa was once considered to be the most extreme railway in the world. It takes passengers on a 3-hour ride between the popular cities of George and Knysna along a 67-kilometer route. That's one serious commute. What made the Outeniqua Choo-Tjoe train famous, though, is much of the railway sat just above the rough waters of the Indian Ocean. Riding this train often came with a huge risk, as a bad storm or high winds could not only damage the tracks, but also completely engulf the train cars in the seawater. And most people on board probably weren't looking to go for a dip when they bought a ticket. Because of the route's multiple precarious locations, it unfortunately shut down permanently in June of 2009. But even though this may have been a scary 3-hour ride, we're sure it will be sorely missed by many brave train enthusiasts. Number 3. Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad, USA. Colorado is home to a few dangerous railways, and the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad is no exception. Built back in the 1880s, this route travels through the cities of Chama, New Mexico, and Antonio, Colorado. The name of the railway says it all, as it runs over the treacherous Toltec Gorge and then into the Cumbres Mountain Pass. This railway rises higher than any other railway in the United States, so it's a big no-no to anyone with a crippling fear of heights. Or maybe it's the perfect route to help you conquer your fears. Originally built to take miners into the mountains during the gold rush, it became defunct once the nearby mineral deposits had been depleted. But once oil was discovered along the route in Farmington, it was given new life. The railway line runs for 103 kilometers and has become a popular spot for many thrill-seeking tourists looking for views of the winding gorges and mountains and even the long drop below. Number 2. Lynton and Lynmouth Cliff, UK. The Lynton and Lynmouth Cliff Railway in the UK looks more like a roller coaster than it does a train. Built in 1890, this railway passes through incredibly high cliffs in between the towns of Lynton and Lynmouth. Surprisingly, and despite being built into the steep cliffs, it was built in just 3 years. Today, the railway has 2 cars that fit up to a total of 80 people. And while it may offer a proper commute for many people, because of the scenery it feels more like a theme park ride. The train cars move up plenty of steep gradients, so they have to move at an especially slow pace, slower even than a trolley. But since the railway is built into the mountains, you can be sure to see some breathtaking views, including over the edges of the cliffs. Just make sure not to look down unless you want to lose your lunch. Number 1. Duffy's Cut, USA. The final entry on our list stands out from the rest. Duffy's Cut in the United States doesn't cut through mountain ranges or travel above the sea during a storm, but has its own appeal. In Pennsylvania in 1832, a railroad contractor hired 57 construction workers to build him a railway. And just 2 months later, all 57 men had died under mysterious circumstances. Their bodies were buried in a nearby gravesite along the railway. The locals and train drivers alike think that Duffy's Cut is haunted, with the gravesite along the railway being a section that leaves everyone with a strange feeling. Countless conductors and passengers have claimed to see people walking along the tracks, almost causing some serious accidents because of it. The story of Duffy's Cut made it a popular tourist attraction, but it also garnered the attention of researchers and archaeologists, who found some pretty serious stuff during their 5-year excavation. Experts found that the 57 original workers had died violently, with some even being buried alive. Duffy's Cut continues to bring in train enthusiasts and ghost hunters alike, and is surely one of the most dangerous railways around.
Watch our Vehicles playlist for more top 15 videos about amazing vehicles. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best vehicle videos.